Big states, just a continuation of the same thing.
I actually think we need to be a bit more demanding about how we're describing what we're seeing to better understand it. Right? When we say big state, we usually think of the state spending more money as a share of GDP. That's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is greater state direction over the economy. Right? You've got a government here that wants a particular type of growth. It wants growth from the bottom up and from the middle out. It wants to grow the economy, but also navigate an energy transition, a crisis in globalization as usual. And they've said, in these choppier waters, we need a more active captain. We saw three things yesterday. We saw greater public investment, or commitment to greater public investment in GP Energy, the National Wealth Fund. We saw greater public ownership over critical infrastructure like railways. And we saw the use of the law to give a bigger slice of the pie to workers, to change planning. That's a very different kind of state governance. That's what we're seeing. And it's it's quite different to the past 40 years. It's the state isn't in the back seat of the economy anymore. It's saying, all right, we're going to get into the driving seat, because the past 40 years, the way we approached the economy has led to living standards and life expectancy flatlining. It's led to the return on wealth far outstripping the return on work. It's led to climate and natural world destruction. It's led to a public health crisis like obesity. It's like, that doesn't work anymore.
Well,
for this world, these choppier waters, we need a more active captain, and that's what this government's going to try and do.
We must be better able to prepare for something like that in the future. And we know all about the VIP lane, of course.
So spot on. I was working as a doctor full-time at the pandemic in an A&E department, and the PPE guidelines would change almost every other day, right? And the reason would be the evidence is updating, but really you knew it was a supply chain problem, it was a stockpiling problem, and sure, the NHS was sort of separated from austerity, but we entered the pandemic with less beds, scanners and ventilators than virtually any comparable country, right? We re-diverted the entire hospital in which I was working on, focused on one disease which we didn't know how to treat. That was because we've ripped the resilience out of the health service in that decade from 2010, and that is why we were so underprepared. It's not going to surprise anyone in this country that we were underprepared for the pandemic, because 200,000 people died, right? The thing that's surprising is that we thought we were prepared. That's the failure of the British state. We thought we were fine, and we approached it like a flu pandemic. So we relied on antivirals we didn't have. We relied on the assumption that you can't stop the spread of this until too late. And that's the failure we have to learn here, not just for dealing with future pandemics, but with extreme weather events, cyber attacks, any other crises that are coming around the corner, because they are coming around the corner. We need to learn the lessons of accountability.
And we'll find out
many, many deaths. Parth, you were
my point was that these are political decisions, and what we saw was quite weak leadership at that time. We saw this phrase, follow the science, again and again and again. And that was
abdicating
responsibility, because I've got a handful of experts here and I'm too scared to make this really big trade-off. Do I close schools or not? That is a massive question. You're trading currencies at an exchange rate you don't understand, and that's what governing in a crisis involves. And you have to be able to be quite clear on your moral and your ethical trade-offs, and then communicate and justify why you're making decisions.
So I think if you have
to get into the Rwanda deal, but Angela is right. It was unworkable. Not only did it have so many constitutional issues of trying to pass that law, which had to be rewritten 3 or 4 or 5 times, it still wouldn't have worked.
It worked in Australia.
That flight would not have worked.
It did work in Australia.
Anyway, look, the point here, and this is the difference between the previous government and this government, is that the mood music in Blenheim Palace is going to be really different, right? This is a reset of the tone. This is an attempt to show Britain is reconnected. We're not adversarial. We're here to collaborate on transnational challenges, right? Transnational challenges that include organised crime around immigration, but transnational challenges that mean Russia, 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 right?
Okay.
Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, Russia's threat to national security, Russia's problems on energy security. That requires collaboration, not just within the EU, but between the 45 countries that are there in Winston Churchill's ancestral home. And that's what I guess the strangeness here is that you're talking about, in policy terms, in legislative terms, the most successful American president since the war, right? But now he is an electoral liability to people on his own side, is what they are saying. So there's a real strangeness there, and like democracy in politics isn't about what happened yesterday; it's about what happens tomorrow.
But do you think that the success of his administration so far is down to him as a leader? Is it not down to the fact that he followed Trump, so there was a contrast? They were coming out of the pandemic, so they had favourable economic conditions.
No, I think that's probably unfair.
Do you really think that President Biden, as a leader, is responsible for all the things that he's taking credit for?
I think we should give him credit for the past 4 years, I think that should not mean voters in America should be deferential and be like, well, he did a good job there and he's going to do a good job in the next 4 years.
But the real question is why is there not a pool of talented Democrats that they're looking and saying, well, you know, we've got all these options. Who are the other options?
I think that's a good point. Like, what makes a good representative in democracy today? The fact that someone like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance can resonate so deeply with such parts of America, and people on the other side, on the progressive side, are struggling to do that. That is a more demanding version of democracy. It's not just about delivering your policy promises. It's about showing that you're one of us, as a Maloney line. That there's people that you have to represent people as well as deliver your promises, and that's a good warning sign and a lesson to learn for
to overcome that.
Remarkable path.
Yeah, that's potentially true. It's not for us to speculate on this. It is worth saying that the sort of Foreign Secretary today was quite skillfully started building a relationship with J.D. Vance way before he was Foreign Secretary. So, I mean, foreign policy and diplomacy isn't based on cancel culture. The UK government will have to work with whatever presidency is in America.
Which is striking, considering David Lammy has had some choice words for our friends across the pond.
And J.D. Vance has had some choice words for Donald Trump.
Except J.D. Vance has retracted them. David Lammy hasn't.
Right.
Well,
Well,
we'll find out.